Well, good morning. Welcome to Daily Videos with me, Pastor Michelle. I don't know if it makes a difference. Let me see something. Let's do it like that. No, I don't know if it makes all that difference, but there we go. Today is Tuesday, June 30th. We are nearing the end of the month of June, which is crazy. It's been how many months since the pandemic started? 1,000. What feels like 1,000 sometimes, right? But I do hope everyone is hanging in there during these times. And I just want to encourage us all to stay safe. Continue wearing a mask. Continue practicing social distance. Because, as I watch the news, well, I don't watch the news, but as I read the news, and hear updates, it sounds like the numbers just keep going up, and that's scary and terrifying. And so just be safe out there, my friends. Be safe, be as safe as possible, and continue to spread love, even in the midst of all this. I'm preaching this Sunday, and my sermon, I'm preaching the next 2 Sundays still. And this past Sunday, I preached about the importance of spreading love, especially to those who are on the outskirts and who would be considered outsiders. And I'm going to kind of keep with that theme the next 2 weeks even. And this Sunday, I'm kind of preaching about the importance of having friends in low places. I'm still in my head working on that, because my inspiration's obviously Jesus, who was accused of, having dinner and drinking with gluttons and drunkards and all that. And Jesus was seen, and some people thought that was bad that he was hanging out with those people. So anyway, I don't know exactly how that translates in a time of social distancing, but I'm trying my best to find inspiration during these days. But as you know, today is day 2 of my story. But before we get into that, let's hear a little inspiration from this book. The miracle is that we are here at all. Life itself is our greatest wonder. To simply be is awe-inspiring. I believe this, just as I believe it's pointless to waste time chasing after meaningless shit like fame and wealth and status. Better to spend time creating good words, good feelings, good relationships, good memories, the grandest, most triumphant stories of our individual and collective time here. Creating those stories is a sacred act, and all that we are really meant to do. So don't look for me on the hilltop shouting. That's me in the valley with my hands in the dirt. I like that. So let's create and let's pray. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. So, before we get into my story, let's hear a little bit of Hunger Games, shall we? I thought we'd finish up this chapter this morning. So, despite the gristling and the fish, my stomach's growling, and I know I'm going to have what we call a hollow day back in District 12. That's a day where no matter what you put in your belly, it's never enough. Having nothing to do with sit in a tree makes it worse. So I decided to give in to it. After all, I've lost a lot of weight in the arena. I need some extra calories. And having the bow and arrow makes me far more confident about my future prospects. I slowly peel and eat a handful of nuts, my last cracker, the grusling neck. That's good because it takes time to pick clean. Finally, a grusling wing, and the bird is history. But it's a hollow day, and even with all that, I start daydreaming about food, particularly the decadent dishes served in the capital. The chicken and creamy orange sauce, the cakes and pudding, bread with butter, noodles and green sauce, the lamb and dried plum stew. I suck on a few mint leaves and tell myself to get over it. Mint is good because we drink mint tea after supper often, so it tricks my stomach into thinking eating time is over. Sort of. Dangling up in the tree with the sun warming me, a mouthful of mint, my bow and arrows at hand, this is the most relaxed I've been since I've entered the arena. If only Rue would show up and we could clear out. As the shadows grow, so does my restlessness. By late afternoon, I'm resolved to go looking for her. for her. I can at least visit the spot where she set the third fire and see if there are any clues to her whereabouts. Before I go, I scatter a few mint leaves around our old campfire since we gathered these some distance away. Rue will understand I've been here while they'll mean nothing to the careers. In less than an hour, I'm at the place where we agreed to have the third fire, and I know something has gone amiss. The wood has been nearly rearranged, expertly interspersed with tinder, but has never been lit. Rue set up the fire but never made it back here. Somewhere between the second column of smoke I spied before I blew up the supplies and this point, she ran into trouble. I have to remind myself she's still alive, or is she? Could the cannon shot announcing her death have come in the wee hours of the morning, when even my good ear was too broken to pick it up? Will she appear in the sky tonight? No, I refuse to believe it. There could be 100 other explanations. She could have lost her way, run into a pack of predators or another tribute, like Thresh, and had to hide. Whatever happened, I'm almost certain she's stuck out there, somewhere between the second fire and the unlit one at my feet. Something is keeping her up a tree. I think I'll go hunt it down. It's a relief to be doing something after sitting around all afternoon. I creep silently through the shadows, letting them conceal me, but nothing seems suspicious. There's no sign of any kind of struggle, no disruption of the needles on the ground. I've stopped for just a moment when I hear it. I have to cock my head around to the side of the tree. To the side, to be sure, but there it is again. Rue's 4-note tune coming out of a mockingjay's mouth. The one that means she's all right. I grin and move in the direction of the bird. Another, just a short distance ahead, picks up on the handful of notes. Rue has been singing to them, and otherwise they'd just taken up another song. My eyes lift up into the trees, searching for a sign of her. I swallow and sing softly back, hoping she'll know it's safe to join me. A mockingjay repeats the melody to me. That's when I hear the scream. It's a child's scream, a young girl's scream. There's no one in the arena capable of making that sound except Rue, and now I'm running, knowing this may be a trap, knowing the three careers may be poised to attack me. But I can't help myself. There's another high-pitched cry, this time my name. Katniss, Katniss! Rue, I shout back, so she knows I'm near, so they know I'm near, and hopefully the girl who has attacked them with tracker jackers and gotten in an 11 they still can't explain will be enough to pull their attention away from her. Rue, I'm coming! When I break into the clearing, she's on the ground, hopelessly entangled in a net. She just has time to reach her hand through the mesh and say my name before the spear enters her body. One of the saddest moments of the Hunger Games coming up. Don't want to give it away if you're not familiar with the Hunger Games. So, my friends, that concludes that edition of Hunger Games. So, let's get right into it, shall we? So today is day 2 of me sharing with you some of my own personal spiritual story. And so today I continue on. I want to continue on with what it was like growing up in the church where I grew up. And so I want to pick up where I kind of left off yesterday. So I kind of touched on some of the things that I remember, some of the good things I remember from the church. And I want to share some other good things too that I remember growing up, but also some of the more negative things. So as I told you yesterday, I was born again at 7 and 8 and 9, 10. So I said the Lord's Prayer, or said the sinner's prayer. Ironically enough, we never recited the Lord's Prayer at my church growing up. That was something we never did. Just a side note. The first time I remember saying that with a group of people was when I was in seminary, which is just, it's crazy to me that I can say that. I was in my, I was 30. Was I 30? I can't, time is, yeah, I'm 37. Yeah, I was in my late 20s, I think. I don't know, when I was in seminary. But that was my first time at reciting the Lord's Prayer with a group of people. And now, of course, I recite it every day with these videos, and we say it every day in church, at church. So anyway, that's just a side note, just stuff that and like other things, I don't remember. We never talked about Advent. That was something I learned when I went into seminary. And I never knew the church seasons necessarily, because I only knew Christmas and Easter. That was it. I never knew Good Friday. Well, the church was all about Good Friday we never called it Good Friday, but my church, growing up, we focus a lot on Jesus's death, not necessarily his resurrection, or really not his life. It was mostly just talking about how he died. So anyway, I just shared, those are just some side notes. But so after I was saved, so to speak, as I know I was saved multiple times, because at any time you hear a sinners in the hands of an angry God type sermon, talking about people being thrust into the pits of hell, you're going to want to be saved, right? You're going to not want to be the person who didn't pray the right prayer, or maybe didn't say it in the right tone, or maybe didn't mean it in the right way. That fear, my faith, until I left that church, my faith was motivated primarily and almost 1,000% by fear. That was my faith. It was a fear-based, completely fear-based faith. So after I was, I started growing up, obviously. I started getting older. And I'm not going to touch base too much about my struggles with my sexuality too much, because today I kind of just want to give you a background of what it was like. I want to give you, just so you can know what kinds of things I remember hearing when I was a teenager, because underneath all that, in the background to all the things I experienced as a teenager, just keep in mind, here I am struggling with my sexuality, struggling with just becoming, struggling with who I was. Because when I started to mature into the woman you see before you today, you hit puberty and things start changing in your body, and you start to think more about sex. Not to be too graphic, but I'm just saying that is true. And so when I got older, when I was really young, even I was maturing, and my thoughts were around girls, not boys, and so that was terrifying to me. So, and I want to here's a little backstory. Here's a little bit of the background of the church, and I just want you to hear this background. Then tomorrow I'm going to talk more about my struggle, and you'll understand my struggle when you hear what kinds of things happen. So, as I said, there are some good memories that I have of the church where I grew up, and really bad ones. I will share that we had a really small youth group for the most part. I remember when I was in, for the most part, it was just me and the pastor's grandkids that were the youth of the church. And I remember having Sunday school when it was just me, and when it was just like two of us or three of us, and it was just always just awkward. And I remember having to go to Sunday school, and we even had like youth meetings where it was only 3 or 4 of us. And so youth group was not always a fun thing. And I admit that throughout middle school and even into high school, I tried my best. I just did not like going to church, because I was bored in the sanctuary. I didn't like listening to sermons, especially when they scared the hell out of me. And so I remember I used to fake being sick to get out of going to church more than I faked being sick going to school. As a teenager, and I look back and I remember, not to be too graphic, but just to give you an idea, I even made myself throw up once, and I was like, "Oh, Mom, I'm sick. I can't go to church." And so it's crazy looking back how many times I tried my best. Or we would always go on Sunday nights, and I remember my mom, we would come home after church. We'd get home like at noon, and then we'd have to leave again at 6. And my mom would always set an alarm, because she would fall asleep. She would read her Sunday snooze paper, as she used to call it. And I remember I would always turn off the alarm, because that was my way of like, I hope she oversleeps and then she wakes up and it's too late for us to go to church. That rarely happened. So anyway, I just dreaded. Church was just not, it just was dreadful. I mean, there were some, I'm trying to think of any good memories. But things changed when I became a senior in high school, even though I was still struggling with my sexuality. Keep that in mind, everything. But that's just kind of background noise for this part of the story. But everything changed when I was a senior because we got a new youth pastor. We really didn't have a youth pastor. We had volunteers, I remember. But we got a new youth pastor. His name was Nick. And I remember he did come in and revitalize our youth group. I was amazed. And our youth group grew from like 2 to like 30 by the time I graduated from high school. And just that one year. And I don't know exactly how he did it. And as much as I bashed the church where I grew up, and I don't mean to bash, but I'm just exposing the dangerous and toxic beliefs they believe. But Nick was one of those youth leaders, and a lot of how I do my ministry is inspired by him, even now, because he came into our youth group and he, I don't know, he took time to talk with people. He took time to talk with me and learn more about me and my brother. I remember he took both of us out to eat once to Taco Bell. I don't know why that memory sticks with me. And I remember he even came to my school and had lunch with me. And I remember he was a young guy. He was probably in his 20s when he came to our youth group and became our youth pastor. And I remember he was cute. And I remember all my friends thought he was cute, so they really liked it when he came and ate lunch with us. But he did come and just revitalize things. And there were some good memories I had in my senior year of things that he did that were outside of the box. And I remember that. And some of the fun things that he did that I've done with youth groups, even since like he did a fear factor. That was something I remember doing. People would eat, and there was like a prize. He did a lot of that, actually. There was one Sunday I remember during youth group, because things just changed in that senior year. As I said, it went from being just us sitting around circle talking about random things to him coming in and we're playing fun games. We're doing things that don't necessarily, we would have like an icebreaker that has nothing to do with Jesus. It would just be for fun. I remember once he had volunteers come up and drink a whole gallon of milk. Don't ask. I've never had the kids do that, but I do remember them throwing up when I was a kid when they did that. That was gross. The fear factor was gross too. I remember one of the kids had to do, because I didn't participate in the fear factor. I just remember watching. They had to put their face into a bucket of dog food, and they had to like find something that was in there and actually bite it and bring it out. Just remembering some of the things that he had them do. We also had lock-ins. I remember, and this was all my senior year. A lot of stuff happened my senior year. And into my freshman year. Because my freshman year, I was a youth leader, so to speak. I was a small group leader when I was in college. So I do remember, those are just some fun memories I have. We had, looking back, I'm like, I don't think some of the things we did, I don't think they would do it in churches now. We used to do wrestling. Looking back, I'm like, well, how did he get away with that? We had a tarp set up, and this is no joke, and they would pour Dawn liquid soap and water on this tarp, and then they would just let us wrestle each other. That's a weird memory I have that just came into my head. And it was interesting. We did a cardboard box maze once, which I've always wanted to do that in church, where they had cardboard boxes set up and they were scattered throughout the entire church, and you would crawl through them. You would crawl through the maze, and it would take you to different areas of the church, something I definitely could not do now. I could not crawl for that long. But yeah, I could go on and on. Here's some other memories though, because I do remember going to Cedarville, where I wound up going to college, and I went there as a youth leader for summer camp when we took the teenagers summer camp. This was my freshman year. That was my first exposure to Cedarville, and I was a youth leader. I remember that, and And then can I just share one more story? So during one of our lock-ins, because this was when I was it was during my freshman year. A lot of stuff happened my senior year and freshman year. I remember we we did a skit to the song Turn Around. That one song, Turn Around, every now and then I get a little, that song. And they had us do a skit for the church. And I remember that song was playing. Someone played Jesus, of course. And then the rest of us, we were dressed in black. I don't know why I remember this. And we had like a piece of paper stuck on our chest, and it said a sin. It said different sins. And we started out with our back turned against, the people just saw our backs. Then every time, I'm blanking on the title of that song. And every time the singer in that song says turn around, the people that were holding the sins would turn around and it would show the sin. I don't remember what mine was. Looking back, it would be ironic if it was homosexuality. But, so I remember that, and I remember Jesus came. The whole point of the thing was to show that Jesus came and takes your sins away. It was an interesting skit. And then one more thing that I remember doing as a teenager, and this happened, I think, my freshman year. We had a Christian haunted house. This is no joke. Teenagers would come. We would come in, and you would start out, and it was free. So the only price was your soul. No, maybe. So you would go in and you would be led through all these different scenarios. And like there would be a person who was a sinner, obviously, and who had done something wrong. And this girl, I think she was drinking or something like that, because everything was a sin back then. Everything. Cussing, listening to rock and roll music. I remember my brother and I would go into our bathroom and listen to music that wasn't Christian without my mom knowing. I mean, that's the level of rebelliousness that I was at. So anyway, the Christian haunted house, you would go through these rooms and this girl would do something bad. And then like you see her do the bad thing and then she would die. It could have even been a drunk driving thing and she just died. And then you get into this room where you see Satan, and then you see Jesus. And you see Jesus tell the girl, I'm sorry, your name's not in the book. And I never knew you. And I smile because of the ridiculousness of this. And then Satan's like, this isn't exactly how it went down, but Satan's like, oh, you're with me now. I don't remember. But then you actually follow the girl and you see, and she goes into this room. They had it decorated with pictures of fire and all kinds of stuff. And it was terrifying because you see that she went to hell and you see what hell looks like. But then I think you had a chance to see what heaven looks like too. Because obviously you're going to pick the heaven side. And then at the end, whoever's the youth pastor, I think, was at the end, and he's like, who wants to be saved and not go to hell? And of course, like almost everyone that went through the haunted house said, me, including me. Because when you see even a depiction of hell, you're not going to want to go there. So I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot. But I just I could go on and on. But I do want to share though that growing up, my total aspiration, what I wanted to be when I grew up, was to become a veterinarian. And so I had worked everything out. My senior year, I was ready. I was going to go, well, at first I thought I was going to go to The Ohio State, but then I decided I would go to UC. I went to University of Cincinnati, and I went there for my freshman year my goal was to get all those get the freshman year of classes done, and then maybe transfer to Ohio State, and then go to vet school at Ohio State. This was my total. This is what I wanted to do. And so I do want to share my initial call into ministry real quick though. So I remember I was, and I really do believe it was the Spirit telling me. I remember sitting in biology class at UC, and I just remember getting this feeling that washed over me like, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. And it just completely, I call that moment my first burning bush moment, because it was like God was telling me this isn't where you're supposed to be. Now keep in mind, I'm growing up in a very conservative household where women were supposed to be helpers and silent helpers, and married and with 2.5 kids. So when I thought I was called, when I first initially got that call into ministry, I thought I would go off and become a glorified Sunday school teacher. I mean, paid lots of money in school loans to become a Sunday school teacher, or a missionary. Because ironically enough, the church where I grew up, this is hand of God, this is what they taught. Women couldn't lead churches and preach here in America, but you could go to Africa, you could go to other countries, and you can do whatever you want there. So it was looking back, I'm like, how? Yeah, I could write a book about the ridiculous things that I was taught to believe in. I really could. So I thought I would become a missionary. But so that's why I went to Cedarville. It was a Christian college, conservative. So it fit, that mold, because I was still very much, I didn't want to go, I didn't want to, I needed to go somewhere where Jesus was at the center. So that's how I my initial call into ministry. And I'll tell you more about my full-on explosion of the call later. But that's just kind of some of my background story. And so, and throughout, and just keep in mind, tomorrow I'm going to talk more about my struggles as a teenager and what it was like. But just keep in mind that the church, overall, where I grew up, most of the messages I remember hearing were fear-based and a lot of hate. Our church was so against anyone that was different from us. I mean, we thought that we held the truth and everyone else held the lies. Because I remember hearing things against Catholics, against Methodists, against anyone that wasn't Baptist, who wasn't our version of Christian. They were going to hell. Especially gays and lesbians. And I'll talk, and just so you know, and even blacks and even African Americans and anyone, we weren't a very diverse church. I mean, it was, gosh, I look back and I'm like, there was so much bad stuff that was taught. And we protested a lot of places. I remember protesting, going with my mom when I was a teenager, and we protested against abortion. I remember holding up a sign even. I mean, those are things I remember very clearly. And I remember being told I remember making fun of someone that my mom thought was a lesbian, and when I was younger, and I remember just going along with it, making fun of anyone that was different, right? And so, I mean, there was just so much fear, and as a kid, I was constantly working to be in God's favor. I was constantly doing things. I was trying to be the best person that I could be, and that meant, I broke some rules every now and then. I lied, and I cheated on a test once when I was in 3rd grade. I stole a pack of gum once at a convenience store, but returned it in the next minute or so even. But it was a lot of my actions were just based on trying not to go to hell. And that was how I lived until I left that church, my church of origin. So anyway, so more about my struggles with my sexuality tomorrow. So that's just a little taste. I know I talked for a while because I just have a lot of stories I can share about what it was like, the things that we did at that church, the good and the bad, but mostly bad as far as the beliefs go, because you can do all the fun things you want, but at the end of the day, when you're out there and you're telling people they're going to hell, that's just, it kind of it kind of negates all the good things you were trying to do. Because that whole like witnessing to people and trying to get them to go to heaven, that was like a big part of growing up for me. I just want to share one more story. When I was at Cedarville, I took a evangelism class, and I remember we went to the campus of the Ohio State, and we actually went and like passed out tracts, and we talked to people about heaven and hell. And it's, and the way we were supposed to start up a conversation was to go up to someone and say, if you were to die right now, where are you going to go? And such a great icebreaker, right? And I remember I didn't do it very well, because I think I only talked to one person, and I didn't want to, and because I remember, what I remember specifically about that time was that we actually were making a competition to see who could save the most souls. And that's just, I think I had like one. No, I don't even think I had one. Never mind. Because I think I went up to someone and I just said, how are you? And I didn't even bring up the topic of heaven and hell. I did the same thing when we went on a mission trip to New York City, where we had to witness to people. And I remember we did magic tricks where people would come up and they're all surprised and they're all watching the magic trick, but the big reveal was always hell. So it's, yeah. And like, that was our way, distract people, give them something to watch, and then give them the big reveal about heaven and hell. Anyway, that's just a little bit of a background. Just know that I struggle with my sexuality so much because of just those things that were pounded into me over and over again, that being gay, being lesbian was the epitome of sins, was the sin of all sins. And I desperately did not want to go to hell, and I desperately wanted God to love me. So therefore, that's why I struggled. So tomorrow I'll share more of that story. But today I just wanted to give you a little bit more background about the church where I grew up, which there are some good memories, as I said, but also just those toxic beliefs that I was being taught growing up pretty much overshadow any of the good that I remember from that church. So anyway, so that's me. That's a little bit more of my story. So I invite you to tune in tomorrow. I know I talked a while today, but it's fun to talk, and it's kind of even therapeutic. So God bless you all, and I hope you have a good Tuesday.